We are going to look at that controversial subject, or so many people claim, about the origins of Christianity and its relationship to colonization. Basically, the claim that Christianity arrived to Africa, or in Africa, brought by colonizers, in the main European missionaries. And we want to look at this deeply today, Bantwana Benkosi, and I'm joined by Paul Germond. He says he's not a professor, I don't know why, but he was my teacher at Wits University, and he's an Anglican priest and sociologist of religion. He was teaching that when I was a young radical there at the university. But thanks deeply for joining us, Paul, and creating time.
Mbuyiseni, it's my pleasure to be with you, if I may call you that.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Professor Simangaliso Kumalo, Dean and Head of the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics at UKZN. Prof, thanks for creating time and joining us. Are you in Durban?
I am in Pietermaritzburg.
Pietermaritzburg. Is that the head campus? Not really, no?
Well, it's the founding campus. Of course, things have developed now. You can call the Howard College, maybe.
Yes.
Or in fact, the headquarters is at the Westville campus now.
Okay. But thanks very much, Dean, for being with us here. I'm going to start with you, Paul. And this is obviously for obvious reasons. Paul is an Anglican priest. That's Protestant Reformation. But did the colonizers bring Christianity to Africa?
May I just say hi to Simangaliso?
Oh, yes.
He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul. It's been a long time.
It's been a very long time.
Have I missed your credentials as a man of God, Bab Kumal?
Yes, I am. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, please state them for the sake of the audience.
Oh, yes, yeah. I'm also a Methodist minister. I'm based in the Methodist Church.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes.
Okay, Paul?
There's an amazing untold story that I think speaks to our story here in South Africa in the 21st century. And it takes us back 2,000 years. It's a story of Africa. It's a story of North Africa. It's a story of the great city of Alexandria, which was the greatest place of learning in the ancient world. Athens, with Plato and Aristotle, was 400 years earlier. It was principally a place of philosophy. Alexandria, which developed in the late part of what's called the Hellenistic period, was a place of great learning. They had the famous Library of Alexandria. They studied maths, science, astronomy, and had this enormous library where they collected, and around it great scholars from all over the world. It was the place of greatest learning in North Africa, Alexandria. And it was the place where early Christianity was profoundly shaped. Christianity arrived in Egypt, North Africa, probably within decades of the death of Jesus. And the School of Alexandria was a profoundly important school of theology, a particular approach to theology. And they're great scholars who I studied as an undergraduate, and nobody ever referenced them as Africans, but they were Africans. Clement of Alexandria and others, and their particular contribution to the development of Christianity was how to study the Bible, how to study the Old Testament, how to study what was emerging as the New Testament, The New Testament took several hundred years to be compiled, and they were hugely influential, not only in the development of biblical interpretation or hermeneutics, the science of interpretation of the Bible, but in the formation of the Bible itself. What books made it into the Bible and what didn't. And they were profoundly influential in that. They, secondly, were very profoundly influential in understanding who Jesus was. Early Christianity took almost 300 years to decide in a formal way that Jesus was God. So the concept of the Trinity was being hammered out in North Africa. And the most important person there was Athanasius, and he was in the 300s. And his defense of the deity of Jesus Christ led to the formation of the theology of, well, he was one of the most profound voices in the development of the theology of the Trinity. So the concept of Trinity itself was in a way defended and born in Africa. At the end of the 300s, there's Augustine of Hippo. Hippo was in North Africa, Algeria, and Augustine must be one of the most influential theologians in Christian history, especially in the Western Church, the Roman Catholic and its breakaways like the Anglicans and the breakaways like the Methodists. His book, The Confessions of St. Augustine, has been described as the first autobiography in the Western tradition. It was widely read. It was popular. It was accessible. It was short. And it had a very particular theology that shaped so many lives. And I remember reading it myself and finding my own life shaped and touched by his understanding of the individual. He was an individualist in a sense of his encounter with God was a very internal one. And that shaped Western understanding of the individual having a relationship with God.
A subjective,
yes,
intersubjective relation,
And that was always in tension with the way the church was the mother, and somebody grew up within the church. Later, Reformation, you mentioned earlier, went back to Augustine and found in Augustine the right for the individual to have their own point of view and their own encounter with God, which was not necessarily mediated. So Africa shaped early Christianity in ways that are profound. And that's not a story that is often told. And I think we need to claim that for Africa, that these profound theologians, this profound work, the profound development of what Christianity was born in Africa. Going from Egypt and the Coptic Church as it became known, we go south and a little east and we land up in Ethiopia.
Yes.
Ethiopia, way before Christianity became official in England. England, it was about 597 with the arrival of St. Augustine, who was the great missionary to England. That's 597. In the 300s, Ethiopia, the kingdom of Aksum, became officially Christian and remained Christian till the very present day.
before the first European established kingdom became fully Christian?
Before England.
Before England.
Yeah.
So England would be the first.
No.
Okay.
England 597. Aksum in the 300s.
Was there before the 300s a country or a kingdom in Europe that was Christianized?
Yes. Rome.
Rome.
But it was Constantine who declared Christianity the official religion of the empire. And that was in about 318, somewhere around there.
So Aksum and the Rome around the same time.
Yes, and so as states that officially declared their territory as being Christian at the same time.
If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We are speaking about the origins of Christianity, specifically focused on the question of whether the arrival or the coming of Christianity to the continent was by colonizers, in the main the missionaries. I'm speaking to Paul Germond, Anglican Priest and Sociologist of Religion, as well as Professor Simangaliso Kumalo, Dean and Head of the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics at University of KwaZulu Natal. Professor Kumalo, I wanted to bring you in now. This is very much old. We are speaking about 1,700 years at least, 1,700 years ago. Some of the countries that colonized the continent were not born yet, on the one hand. On the other, some of those communities were not Christianized yet. But so was the southern part of the continent, specifically where we are now. And is it the case then that maybe when one says to South Africa, the Bible came with missionaries?
One can say that the Bible came with the missionaries, but not God. You know, the African people themselves had an understanding and an appreciation of God from their own perspective, and in a way that God had revealed God's self to the African people themselves. The actual Bible itself and coming, it only comes a bit later, but not the understanding and appreciation of the knowledge of the existence of Christianity, because the African people, and Paul has put it so well by just narrating that whole story, that actually Christianity in this part of the world is much older than we have tended to appreciate. And we always start the story around after 1652 and onwards, whereas when one goes as far back when the Catholics arrived much more earlier, so the gospel is much more older in this context. It's only maybe specifically the brand of Christianity and the understanding of the Bible that comes much later.
If I were to then pursue that line of argument, and okay, maybe before we pursue it, as to what is colonial about the history of Christianity, because it seems to me at the same time we can't deny that accompaniment, as it were, of the church and the colonizers. But let me go back again. The very biography and geography of Jesus, Paul, is not limited to Palestine
Yes.
the upbringing of Jesus, it seems to me there is this gap between his birth and his reappearance at a later stage. I don't know if it's 8 years or so, where there's nothing on the record. About 8 years of Jesus' life where there's nothing. I mean, as the central figure of Christianity. But we have some alluding to the fact that part of those 8 years would have been traveled in the African continent and some of the space. So would I be again correct to say Africa itself has had to host the Messiah, to teach the Messiah, and to grow the Messiah? Paul?
I think we're talking about roughly 12 years.
It's more than 8 years.
So it's when Jesus was taken by his parents to be blessed at the temple at his birth, and then at 12 years he went in, as was the custom, to Jerusalem again. And there's those 12 years. Mbuyiseni, I really can't say what happened in that period. There are claims that he went east to Tibet and met Hinduism. There are claims that he came down south to Africa. But I'm a little skeptical of claims like that. There's no real imperative for a young child living in Nazareth to travel outside alone, or even there's no record of his parents. And his parents did flee to Egypt, and so his arrival after King Herod had tried to kill the children, he might well have gone with his parents into Egypt. That is possible. Simangaliso, I'm not sure if you've got anything to add to
Prof?
that particular point.
No, I agree. I fully agree with you, Paul, that the record that we have is the one of the parents coming to Africa to seek refuge. There is evidence of that, but there is no evidence on the other claims that are there. It may be possible, it may not be, and just like you, I wouldn't like to comment on that and commit myself on that. My appreciation has always been the fact that Africans intervene, and there is evidence of that in two instances where Jesus or the Messiah is needing refuge, support, and intervention. Firstly, when the parents go to Egypt after the threat by Herod, that's the first instance. And then the second instance is when Simon of Cyrene is helping to carry the cross of Jesus during the crucifixion journey and all that. You then see imprints and involvement of Africa coming into the picture. I do not want to just dismiss those as accidents of history, but see those as maybe through divine providence, Africa being brought into the picture at the crucial moments of Jesus' life. That we see them appearing. Those are the only two instances that I can put my head on the block for, other than the other one.
Okay, let's go then to the question of its colonial history. And I want to pursue this, first an acknowledgement of the main European churches. Certainly, they are not the only churches that get established. There is, as we see it here, from that early age, there is the Greek, and the Greeks didn't participate in the big movements of colonization. There is a old Christian church, and that has its own tradition, the Greek. But there's also the church in Jerusalem. The Arabs or the Palestinians certainly didn't do colonization in the continent of Africa. And you just mentioned Ethiopia. But let's focus now on Holland or the Netherlands. They are the big culprits. The British, big culprits, Spanish, Italians, Germans, certainly those for Africa, Belgium, Portuguese.
Yeah.
Certainly to the huge part of the continent, the message of Christianity comes alongside the violent project of colonization. Firstly, is that correct? And how do we make sense of that interaction then?
Yes, I would agree with you that by and large, the colonial project was both a colonizing, extractive process, but also bringing the ideology of empire. And the ideology of empire in this instance was Christianity, whether it was Portugal and Spain, Catholic ideology moving to Central America, Latin America, and parts of Africa. The project of empire has always involved a religious dimension. That dimension is totally tied up with it. And not very far from here, where we're sitting in these studios, is St. John's College. And St. John's College is an example, and not far from where you're sitting, Simangaliso, is Hilton College. Two schools established to forward the project of empire. Christian schools designed, Anglican schools designed to educate the young people who would extend the empire further. So that is almost an inevitable part of empire building. I don't know of an instance where an empire was built without a religious dimension. Even Constantine, when he built Rome, he tried to unify Rome by making Christianity the single religion.
Yes.
So the impulse of empire, the impulse of conquest, the impulse of domination brings with it an impulse to dominate the mind, to dominate the soul, to dominate the being of the subject people, and that is deeply engaged by the religious dimension. And so Christianity comes to South Africa with that particular history and that particular dynamic of building empire. Now, there were some missionaries who came not with empire. My family, if I may use an example, arrived in Lesotho from France as French missionaries in 1856. They weren't part of a specific empire building, but they brought with them a sense of superiority of Western culture and Christianity over Basotho culture, Sesotho culture and identity. So even when the part of empire was not explicit, there was the ideological superiority. And I think you're going to take us into a question where are there expressions of African Christianity that do not carry that ideological supremacy of Europe.
I see. Let me before that, because I do want to. That's much later.
Okay.
That's much later. And Prof. Kumalo, you that part of the world, eastern part of South Africa, the East Coast, the arrival, as it were. If you could just take us through that history. It seems to me the movement from Cape Town to the east, there's a bit of AmaZulu get Christianized a bit much later.
Yes.
But yeah, are you able to map that for us from the Cape Colony up to, say, Musina, how the Christian faith spreads alongside the spreading of the colonial political project?
Hey, Dr. Ndlozi, it's a very interesting story indeed, because at first, when in 1652, when the Dutch arrived, they arrived from the same ship. They have chaplains. At the time, they used to call them seekers, who were just chaplains, who had two responsibilities, really. The first responsibility is to minister to the people, to the crew itself, and then the people who were in the ship, together with Van Riebeeck and all that, so that they could be, their spiritual lives could be cared for. And also when they arrive here, they're expected to be looking after the spiritual needs and establish the secular churches that is going to look after these people who are settling here. So that's the group that arrives officially and all that. Of course, earlier than that, the Catholics had arrived earlier and started some work, and people like Van de Kemp would come in later. But almost every contingent of soldiers as colonizers that came from England and from wherever in Europe, they came very clearly with the agenda of settlement, of colonizing and developing and all that. And as Paul has rightfully said, it's accompanied by religious ideologies that and are not accidental. These are not accidental. They're structured. There are people who are hired to come in as chaplains, especially firstly to look after the settling community, but also with possibility of converting the Africans that they are going to find here into Christianity. And you see that from all the different denominations. They begin to send these missionaries, but working hand in hand with the settlers. In fact, there were three very important people or categories of white people who came here. We call them the 3 M's. There is always the merchant, so the hard business extracting of minerals, people who are committed to that. Those are the merchants. And then you have the magistrates that they then establish here in order to keep especially the indigenous people along the lines. And then lastly, the missionaries. So the settlers are grouped very clearly into those categories, and they're very much collaborating with one another in their work. And so they start and they develop into the different parts of the East Coast area, and they are joined by different. The earliest, after the Dutch reformed and the Catholics nuances, you also find the London Missionary Society, which was very much supportive of the missionaries who come here at the time. And then you've got the different denominations. You have your Anglicans, your Methodists, your Congregationalists also coming into the interior, developing their work. What we usually miss, Dr. Ndlozi, in this analysis is the fact that the Africans themselves were not necessarily just passive recipients of this gospel and the church and all that. They were active recipients who, in their own way, engaged with this and were quite critical in their own ways at that time. And the missionaries themselves were not just a homogeneous group, and I think Paul alluded to that. They're not a homogeneous group that was very zealous about winning Africa and handing it over together with its resources to Europe. But you also have a group of missionaries who were progressives, very extremely progressive, some who actually even broke away from the missionaries under the London Missionary Society. One thinks of the people who came from the American Board mission of foreign missionaries, who decided to be independent of the state, so they were not supported by the government in England. They were independent of denominations. There are particular names who just came on their own and wanted to push and plant the gospel here without having to be indebted to those systems. So there are different categories of missionaries themselves. There are names like William Wilcox, who came through that, people like Adams Newton, who established the Inanda Mission. The list goes on and on of those kinds of missionaries. So even the missionaries themselves are a mixed bag. They've got a number of ideologies that they have and they hold towards Christianity. And as they spread through to the country, they are informed by some of their own, either they are sending mission organizations or their individual convictions on how they see the gospel to be planted and what it should be and what it should do to be promoted and planted in Africa in a manner that plants the seeds of resistance and empowering them. So it's a mixed bag itself, this history that we are looking at.
What would be a summary, Paul, of the interaction? Is the gospel most of the time spreading through the power of persuasion, persuading kings, persuading chiefs, persuading the general African public, or is it forced? Finally, is it made conditional? Get access to this on the basis of being a Christian. And what would be those conditions? Is it medicine? Is it education? Is it access to means of subsistence?
That's a good question to ask, because it's a complex of all those, as you would imagine. Let's take the Kai River as an example, because the Kai River divides what was called the Transkei from the Ciskei.
Yes.
And the conversion of the Amatkosa in their various, because they're various groupings, and they've got their kings and their power dynamics and their religious expressions. On the Ciskei side is much, much more successful than on
the
Transkei side. And they called them the Red Xhosa, and Simanga, remind me, is it the white?
Amabovu, yes.
Yeah, Amabovu.
Yeah, yes.
And there they...
Amakoboga.
Amakoboga.
Yes.
And it's a... when they convert to that Christianity, the requirements were that they live in square houses, that they wear European clothes, that they speak English, and that they cultivate their fields in a particular way, in a British way. In the Transkei, that is rejected. There is tremendous resistance in the Transkei to the spread of Christianity. And the missionaries who write back home to England saying, we're stumped. We have no idea how to actually get the gospel to be accepted in the Transkei. What happens? Because that does change. And two things might have been at the heart of that. The one was the Nongawuse episode with the cattle killing and the profound impact that that had on the security of the Amadkosa. But the other one was the introduction of the plow in the field. Because in traditional society, women were responsible for agriculture, for planting, for harvesting, and men looked after the cattle. And the two were profoundly separate. A woman couldn't go into a cattle kraal. Men weren't meant to go into the fields and work in the fields. But suddenly you have a piece of technology that is way more effective than anything before and can get the job done so much faster. But what it does do is to break those profound gender norms. And that upsetting, those two great upsets of the cattle killing and of the introduction of the plow might have so destabilized the cultural integrity of the Amadkosa on the Transkei, that the mission activity can proceed because it's into an unsettled world. So that's what I'm trying to do is illustrate the complexities of this process. It never was simple. And I don't know if we understand fully the dynamics, such as the plow, such as other events in the history of the peoples that create their vulnerability, if we want to call it, to shifting to another form of understanding how the world works, which is what Christianity asks for.
Professor Kumalo, let's fast track. There are these interesting movements that of the 20th century, I think, Paul, and the breakaways are from American churches. ZCC, Shembe, and Manku of the St. John. The breakaway is not from European missionaries for them to start these movements. They are from Faith Mission, which is an American, Apostolic Faith Mission, which is an American denomination. Can you take us through the relationship between those religious movements and the claim of coloniality?
Well, in fact, the breakaway itself, Dr. Ndlozi, starts with breaking away from the English-speaking churches coming from Europe. That's the beginning of the breakaways. When one goes far back to the breaking of Mangena Mukoni, who broke away from the Methodists, and interestingly enough, to form at the beginning it was the Ethiopian Church, but then it moved into becoming the Methodist African Episcopal, and then later there is the one that you talk about, where you see the ones who broke away from Leroux, who came very much strong with the evangelical spirit and preaching around here, having been building on the revival that happened in Azusa Street, where the Pentecostals emerged and all that, and they come in here. The resistance and the breakaway from that, and then there are two streams, the earliest streams in that. There is the Zionist, which was with Daniel Nkonyane. So those were very much breaking away from this American church, wanting to bring in an African perspective. But you also then have the other forms that remain Pentecostal, itself. And it's shaped very much also by the African experience of the Spirit. The people have the quest not to be trapped into this American form of Christianity and understanding of the Holy Spirit, and they begin to look at the Spirit and be influenced by the Spirit by being rooted in the African experience and faith, and the quest to form churches that talks to them, their needs, their experience of oppression, their experience of exploitation and all that. But also they are wanting to have control over those churches so that they become their churches, not just churches that are planted in them on behalf of the Americans or all foreign denominations. But Africans are taking charge of their own spiritual lives and their own denominations, and they build up structures and systems and organize these. And they become very, very powerful evangelists who did this kind of work. You think of people like Duma, you think of people like Ngidi, you think quite a number of these giants. What
Simanga,
yes.
I wonder if I could just interrupt and ask a question.
Yes.
It seems to me that the breakaway you speak of from American churches was very good. But I wonder, especially in the case of Zionism, because Zionism came from Zion City, Illinois, where they had created this holy space, Zion, that was free from a very hostile world of danger. A missionary came, I forget his name now, but in 1908 from Zion City, and his first person he baptized was in Wackerstrom, which is on the border of KZN and Mpumalanga. I think he laid a seed because he was here for 1 year and then he returned. He laid a seed of Zionism, of a city that was pure. And it was not a breakaway, but an African Lechanyane, Engednas, who took that idea. And it took some years, but in 1924 he establishes the ZCC, which becomes the largest church in South Africa. I wouldn't describe him as a breakaway. I would describe him as taking an idea that comes from and then seeking a place to develop it. And he lands up in Moria outside Polokwane, and he establishes his church. And he establishes his church very much with an Old Testament and an African mix, where it is a holy space. And for Zionists, the physical land has to be made holy.
Holy, yes.
And there are strict rules about cleanliness, what you can wear, what you can't, what you can eat. And that is bounded within an African and an Old Testament context, which seems to me more of a laying of a seed, which then sprouts.
So in many ways, it is not Christian. I mean, ZCC couldn't be categorized in those terms. It locates itself squarely in the Old Testament. It doesn't, to summon its origins or to summon its foundations as a starting, to summon its different and many sort of rituals and traditions, locates itself most of the time through Old Testament scripture and not New Testament.
Lechanyan himself spent 3 years at an Anglican school and 3 years as a pastor at a Presbyterian church. So I would think he would want to keep the idea of church.
I see.
Yes.
But the Christian part of Zionism might be a lot weaker than in mainline churches, if we want to use that unfortunate phrase.
Yes.
So it is squarely a church.
I think so. And they make
upon
that-
this rock, I will build my church. I get it.
But Simangi, you've got Shembe.
Yeah.
Yes, locate Shembe for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we can use these two categories to differentiate between these groups. There is the African independent churches. Those are the ones that broke away from the white churches for whatever reasons, maybe reasons of polity, of leadership, sometimes conflicts around doctrinal beliefs and all that. But when they move, usually they would always establish from where they come from the denomination that they came from, and try and establish their own with some nuances here and there, and some sense of independence. But there is also the second category, which is the category of African instituted churches. And African instituted churches are those that Africans get converted to a denomination, they become part of that denomination, they learn, and they even go to seminary, as you say of Shepherd, and participate in that. But they then have a vision of building something new that is of their own. And they go the extra mile of reinterpreting doctrine, reinterpreting scripture.
They literally started a denomination.
Come again?
They literally found a denomination.
Exactly. They literally found their own denominations and all that. So you see those different categories that you see in them. And so some of this, for instance, Shembe started growing up as a convert of the Methodist Church in Harrismith, and also had contact with the Baptist, Lisheka, who was the pastor there, helped him. But then he suddenly finds this spirit of healing and all that, and hears voices that call him to go and found a denomination of his own. When you look at the Anglican, at Shembe and the Methodist, there is nothing whatsoever that is common. Those are two different worlds. So that one would be understood as an African instituted church.
Before we, because of time, Babu Kumalo, just locate the struggle of ancestral dimension at these disagreements on the one hand, but also that what constantly happens is the African insisting on not abandoning the ancestors as mediums of spiritual vocation, prophecy, spiritual inspiration, which European mainline churches were in a way destabilizing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in fact, the conflict there is unfortunate, and the European churches have to be blamed for that, for having been arrogant, not wanting to listen to the Africans, what they meant by ancestrization and the veneration of those who went before. Because the missionaries themselves, and everyone, from scripture, from whatever you think, they came with the saints. The people that they loved, who died and went before them, they understood them to be saints. They did prayers to them. Our prayer books that we inherited from them have liturgies of recognizing the saints, praying for them.
But can a saint reappear to deliver a message? Can I say Saint Peter? Who's the most recent saints from the old pope? Like some saint in Dagaskrum or something. Saint Jabulani appeared to me, and he has asked me to slaughter a cattle and ask for forgiveness from the Lord.
What about that story of the Transfiguration, Dr. Ndlozi, in Scripture, where actually Peter and Moses appear in front of Jesus, not even of missionaries. Long dead, some years ago, but then they appear again in the Bible during the story of the Transfiguration. But even later in the history of the Catholic Church, there are stories of saints who have appeared, and there's been symbols and things that they've done. So there is that. And people continue to go to lay tombstones, to go and lay wreaths and all those sorts of things. But when Africans came up and also said, we also believe that and in fact they even named their churches after these churches, after these saints, St. Peter, whatever church.
Except, Professor, the difference is ancestor is fundamentally in the lineage of family.
Right.
And in this case, you're speaking about a very circular relationship where somebody of European origins that I have no sort of immediate blood relations. Of course, everybody in the world is blood related, but I cannot trace in my ancestral lineage. Can appear to me, maybe it's Chinese or Taiwanese, and deliver a message to me. That's different. That's not ancestral claim that these Africans were made. These Africans were saying, in my family, there are certain things that are transferred spiritually, certain gifts of prophecy, certain gifts of I can get possessed by my grandmother.
Or your grandmother can get very cross with it because she will say,
yes.
You've neglected me.
Yes.
Come and take care of me.
Yes.
So there's that intimate relationship.
It is truly theologically that dimension which it seems to me is at the center sometimes of some of these movements. The rejection in European theological aspirations in their diversity. At least they unite on that is not consistent with the church.
Smanga, do you know what the position of the ZCC is on ancestors?
That's a good question. I have not followed on that one, on where they stand on ancestors.
What about Shembe?
Shembe doesn't really adhere to ancestors, ancestor veneration. But you see the confusion where it has come.
Most Anglicans, when they undress, they go and consult traditional leaders, traditional healers, traditional spiritual forms.
Yeah.
And isn't that not necessarily discouraged in the Anglican Church, or Methodist Church in particular?
Well, you see, in the Catholic Church too, you see, there are folk versions, if we want to use that term, of our Christianities that people, and I think Africans way more than Europeans, because Europeans were trained in a sort of enlightenment model that there's a right and there's a wrong way of doing things, and that transfers into theology. In Africa, you try things. Anything can work. And so you have people who go to church on Sundays and will go to see a sangoma and find peace in the evenings. And so there's a much more fluid thing. But the Bazalwani, the Pentecostals, do not like the ancestors. And so this modern Pentecostal movement that's been so powerful.
Charismatic, to be specific.
Charismatic. Yes. The Neo-Pentecostals take a very dim view of ancestral veneration and ancestral respect. But it is so fundamental to the concept of Ubuntu or Bophelo in Sesotho, that the ancestors are at the heart of that. You can't have life, Bophelo, if the ancestors are not deeply engaged and respected in that moment.
Let me conclude, because an hour is not enough, but quick question to both of you. Are those instances Christianity evolving, or are those instances Christianity being consistent with how it always was with the earlier narration of its northern founding moments? Professor Kumalo?
I think for me, there is an evolving there that we see. It takes different forms, it takes different characters as it gets into different communities, cultures, and people, because the God of Christianity is a big, complex God who is not limited by space and time and even cultures, but takes different forms as God gets revealed to people in their different contexts where they find themselves. So for me, it's very much an evolving process that we see, rather than consistency.
Paul?
Change. Things change. They don't stay the same. They're changing in Europe. The church in Europe today is not the same as the church in Europe 100 years ago. And we here in Johannesburg are living in a place where Africa is being remade each day. And African Christianity is being reshaped. New things are happening. And so we live in a world where religion is changing constantly.
That's Paul Germond, academic, African priest, Anglican priest, and sociologist of religion. Professor Simangaliso Kumalo, Dean and Head of the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics at the University of KwaZulu Natal. Thank you both for creating time to speak to us here on Power Talk. Thanks
very much.
Thank you so much.
And nice to chat to you, Simang.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.